so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
All right, welcome to the Hoosier Huddle Podcast presented by Heartwork Brewing and heartworkbrewing.com. Let's hear from our friends over at Heartwork.
At Heartwork Brewing, we are fiercely independent. From our variety of craft beers to our artisan Neapolitan-style pizzas, we put our heart into our work. We offer a full menu of draft beers, from our award-winning lagers to IPAs, sours, even our house-made seltzer. Our Northside Taproom has a variety of events and spaces for groups of all sizes. Heartwork is proud to be a locally and veteran-owned business here in Bloomington, just a stone's throw from Memorial Stadium and Assembly Hall at 1703 North College Avenue. Visit heartworkbrewing.com for hours and event info.
All right, that's from our friends over at Heartwork Brewing. Thank you to them. Really good pizza over there as well. TJ, we have a big game to get through this week. You know, if people didn't know, it's Indiana, Illinois, a top 10 matchup at home with Indiana ranked, which is only like the 8th in history of the program, which is a big deal. Indiana comes in ranked 19th, Illinois at 9th. Notre Dame's still ranked, but they're 0-2. We'll get to that at some other point. But how are we feeling? Indiana coming off a 73-0 win over Indiana State. Not surprising. I think the biggest story coming out of that game is Lee Beebe Jr. Being lost for the year with a non-contact knee injury. However, you might have found his replacement during that game as redshirt freshman Kobe Martin looked explosive, ran for 109 yards and 2 scores, albeit in the second half against a team getting their butts kicked. But he looks like he could be that third back there. What were your takeaways from Indiana State?
It was as dominant of a game as you can have. Didn't give up a first down until right around 4 minutes left in the first half, I think. It really felt like Indiana could have set the score. That's a phrase that gets tossed around, but if Indiana wanted to score 100, they could have done so. Fernando Mendoza, I thought, looked better in week 2 than he did in week 1. And he looked better in week 3 than he did in week 2. He was extremely sharp. Really good from Fernando Mendoza. He looks a lot more comfortable having time in the pocket and being confident that he does have time. We talked about that after week 1, that's not something he was used to at Cal, right? So he looked like, okay, I'm going to have a few seconds back here to go through my reads, find an open guy, step into a throw, and let it go. And he's got a laser, and he showed that multiple occasions. Omar Cooper, huge day. So in the past 2 weeks, Indiana's had Elijah Surratt go off for 3 touchdowns, and now Omar Cooper one-up him and get 4.
He was one away from setting the program record, and I think he finished like 7th on the all-time list of school for single game receiving yards. It's one of those games where you don't want, you saw what could happen if you play a guy and accidents happen and people get hurt.
Yeah,
but to set those be so close to those records would have been the story. Omar Cooper did win Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week as well.
Yeah.
Let's get some opening thoughts on this matchup on Saturday. It's a 7:30 game on NBC. Parking lots open at noon, and it should be one heck of a day in Bloomington.
It feels like we've waited to have this exact episode of our show and talk about this exact game, I don't know, 6 months. It kind of feels like this is what we've been pointing towards.
Probably longer. I would probably say after Illinois beat South Carolina in the bowl game, that was
it's probably true. Yeah. We knew, okay, Illinois is going to have a bunch coming back. They're going to be ranked highly. We felt confident IU was going to be good again. So you knew, okay, if both teams take care of business, this one's going to be huge. And that's exactly what's happened. Indiana comes in as a slight favorite, but I do think as national media start to talk about this game, this one will be a popular, Indiana gets upset pick. That'll be a popular underdog for Illinois to get the win here. And I understand it. Illinois, I think you have to look at one, Brett Bielema, really good coach, clearly knows what he's doing, has built a really solid program. It's just a very balanced team. We'll get into that a little bit here. There's no glaring weakness to this Illinois team. They have a good rushing attack. They have a good veteran quarterback. They don't turn the ball over. That's one of the stats I'm going to mention here is Illinois second in the nation in turnover margin. They're +6. And most of that comes from what they did against Duke, forcing those 5 turnovers. And that in the past 2 seasons, when they only have 1 or 0 turnovers on their side of the ball on offense, they're 10-0. So if Illinois does not turn the ball over or only turn it over once, they win under Brett Bielema. Just a very, very solid football team that lines up not to beat themselves. And I think that is something that Kurt Zumetti would say the same thing about his team. You line up knowing the other team's going to have to make plays to beat you. You're not going to beat yourself. And I think it's a really interesting matchup because the 2 veteran quarterbacks, Mendoza versus Altmaier, where I think Indiana does have an edge. I think IU is deeper with quality wide receivers. Illinois so far has shown they've got one real difference maker at wide receiver, and that's Hank Beatty. Really good returner, and so far, by far, their top target as a receiver. Indiana has shown they've got a couple guys that they can go to that can change the game, and that's Surratt and Cooper. Illinois has not shown that second and third receiver yet. So I do think that's one area IU has an edge, and that brings in the matchup, right? Is it D'Angelo Pons going up against Hank Beatty? Who wins that head-to-head matchup? Or does IU just go with side of the field and let Hank Beatty get defended by Pons or Sharp or a third corner that's in there? I think that one will be kind of a chess battle to watch between the coaching staffs.
Yeah, I think you just stick Pons on them and force him to throw it to the guy Pons is guarding to beat you, because I think that Indiana State threw a Pons once. It's almost like his stats are non-existent because he takes that side of the field out of play. He had the one pick against ODU and then basically nothing the last 2 games. So I would force them to go. We have an all-American corner. That's what I would say in the coaching staff. D'Angelo Pons is an all-American corner. Hank Beatty is a very, very good wide receiver and a great punt returner.
Yep.
I trust D'Angelo Pons to win that matchup, but you got to make them go get him, D'Angelo Pons, involved in the game that way. Put him on, force the issue, because are they going to avoid throwing it to Hank Beatty because D'Angelo Pons is guarding him? I don't think so. That would be dumb. But yeah, that's
and if they do, then you feel great about it. I mean, if they say, okay, Pons is over there, we're not gonna involve Hank Beatty at all. Well, you win that matchup.
Yeah, I mean that's almost a forfeit matchup. That's that's how I would see it. Is hey, they forfeited that matchup. Let's go
Right.
see how Jamari Sharp or Rylan Gandy or whoever else match up against their other receivers.
Right. And those other receivers, Hudson Clement was expected to be the guy for them. Transfer from West Virginia, had a good year with the Mountaineers. So far, he's got 5 catches for 75 yards. Now, maybe they just haven't tipped their hand with him yet. That could be. It's still early in the season. Maybe there's something they got up their sleeve there. Justin Bowick, I haven't heard whether or not he's going to be able to play on Saturday. He got hurt in their last matchup on Saturday against Western Michigan. But again, less than 10 catches. Malik Elzy, Colin Dixon, just a handful of catches. So they haven't really had that other guy emerge yet. So
yeah, I think Bowick is expected to play according to Bielema, what he said yesterday.
Okay. And he's got 8 for 86. So he is their, by numbers, their second best receiver. But they don't have that secondary guy on paper that you look at and say, I'm really scared of that guy. It's Hank Beatty is who you're circling on that scouting report.
He has 19 catches for 289 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
In the punt return game, he's got 6 returns for 152 yards and a touchdown. I know they don't go against each other, but these are probably the two best punt returners.
Yeah.
Or at least in the top 3, if you want to put Caleb Downs in there, a punt returner too, in the conference and maybe even in the country. They're both aggressive. They both could take it to the house if needed and all those things. We'll talk more Illini later on today with Armchair Illini. But to me, I think where IU could have a major advantage is Indiana's defensive line against Illinois' offensive line. Illinois' offensive line hasn't been great. They're running for 4.26 yards a carry, 9 scores on the ground, but they just haven't looked as good as you thought. They have let up 9 sacks in their 3 games, so that's 3 a game. And they have allowed 20 tackles for a loss of 83 yards. And they haven't played a dominant defense yet. They played Western Illinois in the opener. They played at Duke. And then they played Western Michigan the last week. Now, you can look at it both ways, that, hey, they haven't hit their stride yet, or that, it actually could be an issue. So we'll see on that. Let's get to IU on offense, TJ. This is you feel pretty good going into this game, especially after what ODU did to Virginia Tech. But it looks like Mendoza's clicking, and you got other guys involved in the passing game like Jonathan Brady, Holden Stays, which you haven't seen that seam route that he scored that touchdown on. You haven't seen that a whole lot. Scary moment with Elijah Surratt taking a shot to the head early in that game, but he came back and played. Omar Cooper, too, came back and played. And then you got Charlie Becker involved. Like you said at the top of the show, Indiana's depth at wide receiver, they have a lot of guys who, we're going to take away Surratt because he had 3 touchdowns a game before. Okay, Omar Cooper's going to score 4 touchdowns. You want to take away Omar Cooper, then Surratt comes open again, and E.J. Williams, who's been a favorite target, hasn't shown that explosive play yet, but he's a guy who has double-digit catches this year, who can make that explosive play. It is pick your poison. So are you going to cover? Are you going to double one of them? Are you going to go to zone? Are you going to play, tight man coverage? As long as Indiana's offensive line holds up, I think they're going to be pretty solid. And what gives you kind of a glimmer of hope on the offensive line against Duke, Illinois only had 2 tackles for loss.
Mm-hmm.
They have 20 on the season. 2 of them came against their only Power 4 opponent.
Right.
Going to sacks, both of those tackles for loss were the sacks against Duke. So Fernando Mendoza has been calmer in the pocket. He did get chewed out by Sig on some read options, so hopefully that's improved. But I think with running for over 300 yards a game, using that and being able to protect Fernando Mendoza well enough to where now he's not running for his life just because he has PTSD from Cal, will allow him to sit in the pocket and even throw in the run when needed and make those plays. It's night and day how much more comfortable he looks. What's your key on offense for IU?
You mentioned that Duke game. Darian Mensah, Duke's quarterback, threw for 334 yards. He was, 23 of 34 for 334. They had the 5 turnovers, but those were 1 interception and then 4 lost fumbles. I mean, so far, Illinois is riding that turnover luck. Now, we've seen that. That can last a full season because teams work on it and they make their own luck. But 5 fumbles by opponents, and Illinois has gotten all of them. I don't know if that's going to continue for them, but
Right. And
so
IU has
Darian
put the
Mensah-
ball on the ground a couple times,
Right,
which
right.
has been 2 and 3 games is not awful, but compared to last year when the running backs didn't lose a fumble, that play where Kaylon Black fumbles and Pat Coogan belly flops on it from 5 yards away. That's
for the first
not
down.
For the first down. You can't have that happen against Illinois,
Right?
Because they're just fast enough to probably beat Pat Coogan.
Yeah. So Darian Mensah, the reason I bring that up, the one power conference team that they have played thus far had a lot of success throwing the ball on this defense. So you like that. And Indiana has run for over 300 yards all 3 games that they've played. You mentioned Lee Beebe being lost for the season. Obviously, that's a knock for sure. Kobe Martin, I know it's against Indiana State. We know who they played. We don't need reminded every time, we make a good comment on Kobe Martin. Somebody's chiming in with, well, yeah, they played Indiana State. Thank you. Yep. Didn't realize that.
Wait, that's who they played last week?
Yeah. Like we know, and we know what context is required, but we also know what our eyes saw. That he's capable. Kobe Martin was quick, decisive. He looked built to be able to play against Big Ten opposition. He's not slight at all. He can be a capable third back for you. Now, what it does is probably just out of a trust factor, increases the load for Kaylon Black and Roman Hemby.
You go from a 1A, 1B, 1C type of scenario to 1A, 1B, and 3.
2 or 3. Yeah. I think that's fair. And we'll see. We've talked about what things has Indiana held back to not show on offense ahead of this game.
Roman
and
Hemby,
I think,
baby.
I think one of those things is Roman Hemby out of the backfield as a pass catcher.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go.
Yeah, we know he's capable of it, and I it's time to take that car out of the garage.
Yeah, and maybe with the injury to Lee Beebe, you see Solomon Van Horst back on kickoff returns instead of Roman Hemby.
Good point.
And Lee Beebe, there. It just seems like Roman Hemby's the guy when they want an explosive play on a kickoff return, they'll put him back there, which is fine because he could do it. But yeah, they have yet to unleash Roman Hemby. He's had some really good runs. He had a really good opener against ODU, but he's more than just hand the ball off to him or pitch him the ball in the backfield. You can get real creative with him on some screens, maybe a wheel route downfield and catch people sleeping. And I also think the tight end game, they've shown bits of it, especially with Riley Nowakowski in week 2, and then a little bit with Holden Stays last week, what you could do there. Now, if the offensive line holds up, you don't have to leave a tight end or running back in to block all that much. And then you could let Hemby and some of these tight ends go, and it really is pick your poison with this IU offense. Only concern for me is putting the ball on the ground and putting the ball in danger in the air. IU's done that twice already. It was, running backs didn't fumble a whole lot last year. So it's, can they clean that up? And then had 6 penalties for 45 yards. That will kind of kill you if you have an offsides on a punt that you get the punt block. That could be a game-changing play. Now, It was Indiana State, and Stephen Daly made a great play on the fake punt. But if you're, Illinois is 4 for 4 on 4th downs. So maybe, if it's 4th and 2 instead of 4th and 7, maybe they go for it and change the game that way. So let's get over to IU on defense. And this is where it's kind of hard to tell what IU has on defense. I thought early on against Indiana State, they still had issues lining up the safeties on the first drive. It did not end up hurting them, but safeties were late rotating on the first play. Maybe that's because they're using fewer hand signals on the sideline, and it just takes a little bit longer to communicate through the helmet, since not everybody has the helmet communication. So you have to communicate from the booth to Aiden Fisher, who then has to communicate to the players on the field. Whereas if you use hand signals, you're going from the booth to the coaches on the sideline to basically everybody, and then you have Aiden Fisher on the headset as well. So maybe that is part of the issue, lining guys up. But defensive line the last 2 games, 30 tackles for loss. I think they played very well, and it's been a kind of a different guy each game. Against Indiana State, I thought Stephen Daly played very well. Tyree Tucker cost somebody a sack by throwing the offensive lineman into the quarterback and making him run and throw the ball a little faster. Mikhail Kamara hasn't hit his stride yet, but he had a pass breakdown. He got through the line a couple of times. I don't know how many snaps he played, but if Illinois' offensive line is as leaky as maybe we think, this could be a big day for the defensive line. Mario Landino played well. There's Hosea Wheeler's playing well. Daniel Radcliffe's playing well. And then with Kellen Wyatt had a big game against Kennesaw State too, and he could get into the backfield. So while they still have to prove it against a Power 4 opponent, the defensive line is probably further along and a little bit deeper than we expected. Yeah, people kind of freaked out with ODU, but man, that quarterback was not in the pocket very long to go get a sack. And Luke Altmaier is not Colton Joseph in terms of running the ball. He can move, but he's not Colton Joseph. He's not going to run it, hopefully not going to run it 75 yards for a touchdown on the first play. But that to me is where they need to step up. And then, findings, you need Byron Baldwin back. I don't know what his injury is, how long he's going to be out, but you need some depth at safety. And this is a game that is going to be a old school, hard hitting Big Ten game where people could get banged up. and it looked like Anthony Chung was kind of your second string safety back there for most of the night. No disrespect to Anthony Chung, but you need some more depth back there.
Yep. And how good do you feel if you're the coaching staff about the first time Byron Baldwin gets on the field, you're throwing him into a top 10 opponent with the veteran quarterback, even if he's ready. It's a tough one. It is. But I think
let's say you're practicing with the twos or with the scout team. You're going against a potential first-round draft pick at quarterback then too. Now it's a little different. You're running the opponent's defense and not your defense.
Right.
But either way, if you're running with the twos and going up against Alberto Mendoza, you're going against a guy who could throw it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a different setting. It's game. And now for the first time, if you're healthy, to be put under the spotlight like that, yeah, that's a tough ask. It's kind of like what they did with Bryson Bonds and playing them against Michigan in his first game.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the first question you asked there was, do we really know what we have with the defense? I think we do know a couple of things. We know about D'Angelo Pons. We know that this secondary can make plays on the ball if it's put in front of them. We've seen that from multiple guys: Lewis Moore, Amari Farrell, Pons.
Farrell should have had a pick last week. That was a bad drop. Yep.
So we know that, and we also know they are good against a traditional running game. And that's what Illinois offers. They take pride in that, and they haven't run it particularly well given the opposition. When you play Western Illinois and Western Michigan and a Duke team that I'll say average on defense in terms of Power 5 level or Power 4 level, I'd say Duke has an average defensive line. You would expect Illinois to do better than what they've done so far to stop the ground. I do think that they miss Josh McCray, who transferred to Georgia. I think they miss kind of that battering ram running back. They've got some good ones. Khalil Valentine, I think, is really good. Caden
Fagan's
is a good player.
6'3", 255 pounds. That's like putting a tight end back there at running back. But
he's a good player. Aiden Lafrey is explosive. So the pieces are there for them to have a really good rushing attack, but it hasn't been awesome so far. And IU matches up really well against a traditional rushing attack. So we know that, and then we know that IU's got that star corner. I do think there's still some secondary concerns with allowing some open plays at the back end. Whether that's lining up or it's busted coverage once the play begins or it's somebody falling over. We saw that. Whatever the issue is, they've given up some more passes than potential big plays because Indiana State missed a couple that Illinois will take advantage of. Maybe a few more than you hope to see. So that's, I think, what Illinois would be looking at on the film as an area they could take advantage of is where is D'Angelo Pons not at? Let's throw it to those areas because that second and third or the safety position, that's kind of been the vulnerability for this defense. That's where you mentioned IU's defensive line, providing that pressure, not letting Luke Altmaier get comfortable, not letting him have time back there. That's where that can negate that potential vulnerability for the defense. So
and
I think providing that consistent pressure on Altmaier will be the key for the defense.
yeah, I agree with that. And then the crowd, it's sold out. It's a red out. People have been looking forward to this game basically since the schedule came out, whenever that was. And it should be, unless Illinois is buying up a whole bunch of secondary market tickets, it should be a loud IU crowd, which could affect things as well. Now, look, Memorial Stadium in Champagne's a good atmosphere too, especially when it's full. They've got some good fans, but it should be, probably the most difficult environment that they've played in thus far this year. Duke had tons of open seats, but they handled that one well. So let's move on to Indiana. IU will raise the victory flag if, TJ, we'll start with you.
I will go with win the turnover battle. It's a very straightforward answer, but I think it is all that more important against a team like Illinois that has done a good job creating turnovers and has not given up the ball on their end. They do not have a turnover through 3 games. And that's a carryover from last season. Luke Altmaier takes really good care of the ball, and it's a major emphasis for Brett Bielema on offense is to keep that ball out of danger and do not put your defense into a bad position. So if Indiana can flip that a little bit, create a couple turnovers, I think IU will be in great position.
Yeah, I'm going to go with IU has to win the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, like you alluded to with the defense. If you could put pressure on Altmaier and maybe force a couple mistakes and make him throw it faster than they would want him to. And then on the offense, if you can, get the run game going, you're not going to run for 300 yards against a Big Ten team usually. But if you could get that number to 150, maybe 200, and control the game on the ground, kind of shorten the game, I think you have a good chance. You protect Fernando Mendoza. These wide receivers can get open. And I kind of expect a shootout in a game that also kind of screams it might be a defensive battle too. But if IU wins both lines of scrimmage, they should be in very, very good shape to win this game. IU can't have this happen. And I'll start here. They can't struggle in the punt game like they have. They need Quinn Warren. Ideally, you would like to have Mitch McCarthy back, but there was no update on Mitch McCarthy this week, so we'll have to see on Saturday when the injury report comes out. But Quinn Warren, he's filled in fine, but he does not put enough air under the ball to give your return your coverage unit a chance to get down. If you're hitting a bouncing ball that goes 57 yards to Hank Beatty, he might return it for a touchdown. If not, he'll at least get 20 on a return and really flip the field. If that happens, that could flip a game that if IU dominates on the line of scrimmage, if they win the turnover battle, but you let up a couple big punt returns, you're in trouble. So switching over to you, IU can't have this happen.
The easy answer, given my first one, would be lose the turnover battle. What I'm going to go with, though, is that they cannot let Luke Altmaier get comfortable. I alluded to it earlier. He's very accurate. He's very savvy. He understands defenses. He's made a ton of starts. If Indiana lets him sit back there and get comfortable, he will pick apart this secondary. I feel very confident saying that because we've seen if Indiana doesn't get pressure, they're going to give something up. And with Illinois' athletes, that could be a big play. So they have to consistently pressure Luke Altmaier, prevent him from getting comfortable. And I think that Brian Haynes is going to recognize that. I do expect IU to blitz. Perhaps
a lot more than they have.
Yeah. And I think it could follow a kind of a similar sort of thinking to what we saw last year at home against Nebraska and Michigan State, where you feel confident that your front seven can consistently, or front six, can consistently beat the opposing offensive line and live in the opposition backfield. And you send them after that. And if there's a couple big plays that get hit because you brought too many guys and got beat, you live with it, because the majority of the time you're making a negative play in the Illinois backfield. So I think we're going to see a lot of pressure brought by Bryant Haynes, and I think IU has got to get home on those. So for me, it's consistent pressure, but really just not letting Luke Altmaier get into a rhythm and get comfortable back there. He could have a big day if you don't.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a bonus one here, TJ, since it's our show. I could change the rules. IU fans have to stay engaged. That's they need to do. They did a great job of last year of staying engaged. Now, they didn't trail at any point at home. Maybe early in the Michigan game when they kicked the field goal, but that was still, you're down 3-0. If Indiana goes down 14-3 or 10-0, I want to see how this fan base reacts, because in the past it has been, oh no, here we go again. Oh no, oh no, oh no. And we've seen it on a couple of the message boards of, uh-oh, we're in trouble. We've seen it all year so far. Games are not over when you're down by a couple of scores anymore. You know, you look at Georgia and Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Tennessee was down big early, or Tennessee was up big early. Georgia came back, and things like that. So they need to stay engaged, stay loud, and put the pressure on Illinois that way. So if Illinois scores early, which they might, you can't let it take the air out of the stadium. Let's get to our Hoosier Huddle Pick'em leaders. We have some people separating from the pack. It is no longer the NFC West. It might be, I don't know, what division has one good? The NFC East with one good team. Prestige Worldwide, TJ, yours truly is in first place with 18-12 with 180 points. Sellout Memorial Stadium. Old name, it should be Sellout Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium, but I don't think we have enough characters. No. Michael Pollan, 17-13, just 10 points behind. The Limestone Legends, Ori Mater is at 15-15. There are a whole bunch of people at 14-16, 13-17, and then there's Nick at 11-19, and Huddle Up at 11-19. And Brian Tonsoni, who still has not made a pick since week 1, at 5-5. So keep watching your pick'ems. I think picks come out later this week. I'm sure IU Illinois will be on it this week. So that, might be a win for everybody, might be a loss for everybody. We'll see. But it's been fun to watch, and we'll see. Best bets for this game, TJ. Indiana. I actually got Indiana at -3.5 earlier in the week on DraftKings. I saw Circa opened it at -5.5, and I think everybody else has settled on -4.5. I do think this game is going to be one of those games that you see on either side on Big Ten Classics or Big Ten Replay over the summer when they need to play something. But I like the home team. I like taking the home team as slight favorites. Illinois fans are going to take the higher ranked team as a slight underdog and take them with the points. Don't know what's the over under on this. I think a lot of points are going to be scored.
52 is the last number I saw. 52.5, I think.
So that's 7.5 touchdowns score. I'm take the over. Take the over on that. So.
Yeah, I think it was bets? An implied score of like 28-24 was basically yeah. I would go over. I think that when you have two veteran quarterbacks that are in good form right now and explosive athletes on both sides of the ball, and coaching staffs that are not scared to go for it. And I don't mean go for it on fourth down, although I could. I mean, be aggressive in their play calling. I think over makes a lot of sense here. I'm going to go with Indiana covering. I want to say 38, but I don't think we're going to kick a field goal. So Indiana wins this one 35-27. 35-27, Indiana wins. So a pretty comfortable over, and a relatively comfortable cover as well. But I like the depth of Indiana's offensive weapons better than I like Illinois'. And I think that the lines of scrimmage, I think that Illinois' offensive line has shown the most vulnerability out of those kind of four. And I think Bryant Haynes will take advantage of that enough to create some negative plays to kind of steal a possession or two for IU. And then I have faith in Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt to make a few big plays.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that. I'm going to go 35-31. I do. They cover on my bet, but I do think this is going to be. This has a shootout written all over it. Two hot offenses. The only thing, there is a slight chance of rain in the forecast, but we're still a couple days out. Where if we saw a lot of lightning delays last week and stuff like that, if that happens, all bets are off, and this could be a 3-2 game or whatever. But yeah, both offenses could put up points. Both defenses could take the ball away as well. And both special teams can have big plays on special teams. So one of those things are going to happen. Either the offenses are going to score, the defenses are going to make a play, or Jonathan Brady and Hank Beatty are going to just have an absolute field day on returning punts. So let's get to closing thoughts, TJ, before we get out of here. Start with you.
Every season you've got toss-up games, and Indiana has two of those in the next 2 weeks. Games that we looked at as kind of pivot points for the season. Not as, if you lose to Illinois, you're not going to a bowl game. No. The program this team is better than that. But it could be a pivot point in terms of the college football playoff.
Yep.
That could be the case. It could be the pivot point between finishing, say, third or fourth in the Big Ten versus sixth or seventh. It could be a pivot point between becoming a top 10 team in the next couple weeks or dropping out of the rankings in the next couple weeks. And we pointed towards this week knowing that these stakes were going to be on the line, and they are. I think both fan bases enter the game feeling the exact same way. Very confident because of the group of players they have, but more importantly, because of the coaching staffs that they have. I think Illinois fans are understandably very confident in Brett Bielema and his ability to win a big game like this.
Yep.
Indiana fans feel the exact same way about Kurt Cignetti and his staff. I think it's going to be a really, really fun night, a stressful night for us as fans, but hopefully we can all sit back and enjoy another big game for our football program. We waited a very long time to have games like this, and now we've got it. Let's remember it's fun to get to go through this.
Yeah, those are a lot of my same thoughts. This is one of those de facto playoff games that maybe in the future doesn't happen if you expand the playoff or the stakes aren't the same. However, I don't want to see an overcorrection on either side if whoever wins or loses.
Right.
If IU loses, the AP will probably vote him out of the top 25. If Illinois loses, we'll see how what happens. They could be out of the top 25. If these were two SEC teams, they'd be, that's a quality loss for somebody and a ranked win for somebody else. Let's keep them in. But for both fan bases, it's great to see these programs be good at the same time. It has happened once since 1950.
That's the last ranked matchup. Yeah, 1950. And the only one.
Yeah, the only one. So, these two schools don't play enough to be considered rivals. They should be. They're less than 200 miles away from each other. But they've played some really good games. I'll be talking to Andy Graham later today about the recent history between the Illini and the Hoosiers. But this is what you signed up for, right? You wanted a top 10 team to come into Memorial Stadium with IU ranked in the top 20, a sellout crowd who's going to be wearing red. It's a primetime game on NBC at 7:30. So what other box needs to be checked off? Enjoy it. Be responsible about drinking and during the day, and just enjoy the day. This is what college football is all about. All right, that does it for today's podcast, TJ. Thanks for joining us. You can follow us on X at Hoosier_Huddle. Come back to HoosierHuddle.com as well. Subscribe. We'll have some paid premium stuff coming up. Basketball coverage is coming as well. We are working on some stuff there. But right now, all eyes are on the Indiana Hoosiers football team. All right. Enjoy. Thank you for listening. Like, rate, subscribe, and come kick it off in the forums. It's a big week.